Ladies and gentlemen, you're watching a live chat with the Undercover Dream Lovers. I'm your host, Sergio Galeano, and I'm joined, once again, by Thomas Keller.
Hi, everyone.
How you doing?
Oh, I'm good. Don't have a mug.
Yeah, we don't have mugs. We have mics, though.
We have mics, but not
We
mugs.
have mics, but no mugs.
I won't stand.
I'm here with Matt and Sarah from the Undercover Dream Lovers. Thank you guys for coming on the show. Thank you guys for... it was a stellar performance. I can't express that enough. It was great. And it's really a treat to have you on. Let's just dive right in and tell us about how the Undercover Dream Lovers came about.
Well, I've always made music, and I started the band, but I always made music, played guitar, and did a lot when I grew up in Pittsburgh, house shows, things like that. But when I moved to New York, when I was 23 years old, I really got away from it for 2 years, and I was doing the New York hustle, working restaurants and stuff. And
do what you gotta do.
Yeah, do what you gotta do. And then you're just you do that for 2 years and you're like, this is not what I want to do for the rest of my life.
Cool.
So I started the project right after that.
So what made you think, you wanted to, this dream poppy, what drew you to the sound?
It's all explorative. So it's kind of when I play with a tone, or when I play with an effect, it's kind of leads me to the next one. So I don't always necessarily dream up the sound beforehand. It's you kind of find it. So I've always liked this kind of music. I've always liked bands like Tame Impala, Unknown Mortal Orchestra, Portugal the Man. I listened to a lot when I was in high school and stuff.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So that you just listen to that kind of stuff, and inevitably you're gonna kind of probably write in that vein if you like it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
How do you feel, by the way, about Portugal the Man making this transition into this the top of the charts right now?
I think it's cool. Yeah.
Miley Cyrus introduced him or something. Didn't they just play Colbert? Or
Miley Cyrus is actually apparently tight with all those guys.
I didn't know that. That's cool.
Yeah.
I always like them. Yeah, people always talk about selling out and stuff, but I don't really. I think it's cool. I think they've always been cool because they make different records every time, and that's interesting for fans, I think.
Yeah, even when Evil Friends came out, it was just it was a huge transition for them. And I think it went well to Woodstock, but I've been listening to them too since forever.
Yeah, totally.
Love those guys. So, okay, why don't you talk to us about the name Undercover Dream Lovers?
Yeah.
What are you guys incognito about that?
No, it was just, I think a lot of bands are when I wanted to start making music, I think a lot of bands are just making lists of band names and trying to come up with ideas, brainstorm, just throw things out there. And I was definitely had my phone and was on the subway, coming up with ideas and just that could be a cool band name, whatever. But in this instance, I was actually visiting some family, and my mom had this valerian root tea, which is knocks you out if you're trying to fall asleep. It's really powerful stuff. It's it just will put you to sleep.
Yeah, it's intense.
You've had it?
Yeah, you wake up and you're like, oh my god, what happened?
It's kind of the healthy version of NyQuil, I guess, in a way, but in tea form.
The holistic
Natural
version.
NyQuil.
Yeah. So I had a cup of that, and I was thinking of band names, falling asleep, was going to bed, and because it was a routine of mine just to think of names and stuff, just those words started matching up, and whenever I hit Undercover Dream Lovers, I added it to my list. I was falling asleep with oh, this is a great name. I'm gonna see if I like it, and it just kept kind of stuck. I was just I enjoyed it. I didn't mind that it was long, or I always kind of find it cool when people don't really care about that. Just
cool. Yeah, I mean, it definitely has that ring to it, especially that it rhymes within the name as well.
Totally.
So cool stuff.
Maybe this is a little bit of a I guess sneak peek to the later topic, but your recording process, because I've noticed that you guys are putting out singles over the course of this past year, which is you've been doing that since the EP last year.
Yeah.
So I can see that you guys are working on stuff. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, the process has always been going with the flow. I do a lot of work in my bedroom. I've had studio time where I've gotten to use like the drum setups and all the mics and stuff like for songs from time to time, but usually like 90% of what I do is like in a bedroom, or like if I rent a space, like I rented a cabin for a month recently just to like go and write and work on tunes. Or if it's a family member's out of town, I'll like be like, hey, I want to get out of town and write. So like I'm always like changing up my home studio. Sometimes it's my Brooklyn bedroom, and sometimes it's my sister's house, or sometimes it's like I rent a cabin or something. So and recently I just drove to Arizona. I just drove like across the state to Arizona solo, and hung out with my buddy Alex who lives there, and we were like coming up and working on some ideas and stuff. So that's like generally I just kind of go with the flow, floating around. Yeah.
Yeah. I like that process. I think that's the best way to create art.
Yeah, it's cool, and it changed it up. Like
It was very natural, though.
Like when my sister had a really cool spot that I got to use, and I had like a dope setup, and it was really cool. But like doing that once was really really fun. But for some reason, I would more interested in like changing it up and not making that same like session again. I find it like more inspiring to like change up where I am and figure out how I want to set up all my stuff and like have different stimuli around. Yeah. Yeah.
Awesome. So our topic, genre tags.
Genres.
Okay, so I don't know. You know that feeling when you're on Bandcamp and you're wondering, I wonder what kind of music this band is, and then it's like postmodern rock but removed twice, or like one of the second cousin twice removed type deals, and I'm just like,
where you're trying to pitch a band to someone, you're like, yeah, they're like this proto punk, but like a dash of like synth pop, and people are like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, things have been getting so defined now. People are very particular, or at least try to be particular with what they're trying to play. So, does all that get watered down? Does it get washed out? Like, what are your guys' thoughts on?
Yeah, at what point does it get superfluous?
Like people really sound. They'll ask, "Is that a real genre? Is that actually
exactly? Does it exist?
Avant-garde jazz?
Did you make that up?
Progressive dream punk? Does that work?"
Yeah, I think it's like pretty subjective. It's interesting talking about genres with musicians and then talking about genres with like industry people, because it almost feels like it's a completely different like set of languages.
Oh yeah.
And it's like we're all talking about the same music, but we're using like completely different words. Like it's like really bizarre.
Yeah, I feel like when it comes to musicians, everyone's kind of just like, yeah, this is the art that we make. We just make stuff. And whereas when it comes to industry or fans or whatever, they get very analytical.
Totally.
About it,
I think musicians also like will try and like they're trying to I don't know, find something new, find a new sound, redefine something, and like when you maybe it's like subconscious or something, but you kind of don't want to like sound like something else. You want to like pave your own way. So maybe subconsciously they're like don't like being labeled for that reason, because you're like, yeah, I make rock, but I'm not AC/DC. You know what I mean? You don't want to like when you start to like think of the category, maybe it has something to do with that.
And also on the same note about how with artists sort of sticking to a same genre, or even like crossing multiple genres within the same album. I've been listening to a lot of King Cruel's latest album, which is actually crazy because like half of it blends into this no wave punk music, and then
with those interludes,
and then it comes into these like produced sort of down tempo jazzy tracks that he does.
Totally.
It's like one track into another, but kind of works,
Yeah.
So like, I don't know. I mean,
yeah, I think that's really cool when people like mix up stuff like that, because there's so much saturation. Like we have so much access to like everything now, and it's cool that people just do whatever. Like you don't need to make like a rock album. You can just do whatever you want.
I think this is like a Ray Charles quote where he's like, I don't know if he's talking about mix or if he's talking about just a song or whatever, but he'll be like, at the end of it, like if it sounds good, like if you're like what you're hearing, it's good. It doesn't have to be done this way, done that way. It doesn't have to, it could be a jazz thing into a funk thing, into a rock thing, into whatever. But as long as at the end of the day you're listening, you're like, oh, this is awesome, then like you're done.
Smart man.
Yeah.
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of view genre tags like any classification system is inherently so wrong.
Yeah.
But it's like our brains like these like very simplified, organized things which don't really reflect actual reality, but there's some part of us that like kind of likes it or just does it anyway because it's like easy and it's nice to walk into a music store and just like know these like different areas, and you just kind of like go to your area, you know. I don't know, but I think it's all wrong.
That's my perspective on it as well. You know, I feel like it's much more to do with the people who are curating the music as opposed to the artists themselves designating their own art, which is backwards. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But in any case, why don't we go on to what you guys wanted to talk about, huh? Well, what do you have for us today?
Yeah, I mean, I was going to tell you guys a little more about like recording and some of the things I've been thinking about as I'm like learning. I'm self-taught on most of the things I do.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I had some lessons when I was younger, but like piano and like guitar and like production and everything and like engineering, whatever. I just kind of like pick it up, and like the internet's great, so you learn through that. But like I didn't have too many like one-on-one teachers really. But so each time I'm like working on a new song, trying to like look at it in a different angle, and just like I've been really like aware of the idea that in the old days you didn't have like computer screens in your face, and you would be using your ears more and thinking about like what's missing from a song versus like maybe a visual, like, oh, what can I block together? What is this piece and this piece? How can I fill versus just like listening to it and feeling what from that perspective. And I think like people want to do that, but it's sometimes easier not to do it with like the equipment you've got. So it's like a really cool challenge to try and like remember that while making songs and apply that while making songs. So I've been trying to like incorporate that mindset as I'm like writing or trying to figure out a section that's maybe missing something or, you know, just not working quite right. It's like all the pieces are there, but it's not sounding as good. Like maybe just stop looking at the pieces and, you know, fiddle with it.
You preferred this process over, you know, going to the studio and doing it the traditional way, I guess you could call it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just been my circumstance to be in a home studio,
True.
And like I love like studios are great, and I think it's like I've like really enjoyed like being in the moment and trying. I like writing in studios. Like I got to actually write a lot of the song "Good Luck" like in a studio session, and then I finished it at home. But like there's this thing called Converse rubber track sessions, and they record you, and like you go in for the day, and they just like they're really awesome, and they like hook it up. And I went in with my buddy Ben who plays the drums, and we had like just a couple chords, no words, no anything, and we just like went in, and in the 8 hours like came up with all the it was listening experience. It was like we came up with all the I didn't have the screen in front of me. Came up with like all the ideas, wrote a bunch of lyrics on the spot, like all the lyrics are in the song, recorded those vocals and the drums, and then went home and did all the synth bass mixing and everything else. Like, but the layout was like completely finished there. It was just cool. It was just like what we thought about it with our like ears and our minds versus like looking at the screen. And then also, that was like an example of a studio session that kind of was a fusion set. Like it was half at home, half there.
So, I mean, like, what is your setup like at home?
Yeah, I use Logic. I've got my computer. I've got the two synths I used here, some guitars, a bass, and an Apollo. Lately, I just got an Apollo, which is just like basic, like DIY equipment, but it works.
No, it's awesome. I mean, especially on websites like Bandcamp, you know, this bedroom pop scene is huge. And I've actually been, there's a record label, I think they're called Z Tapes. I think it's run out of Sweden or Norway. But they actually are pretty prolific with releasing a lot of sort of homemade bands on cassettes.
Yeah.
And so they're kind of like a growing label right now, but they are so into kind of taking in these sort of DIY up and coming artists and giving them a good spot, you know. But yeah, that's totally cool, and it's so awesome that I kind of have the opportunities and accessibility to record at home.
Totally.
Know?
I also think it's really cool, and there's something to be said about bedroom producers in general. You know, anyone these days can make their own art and make their music from the comfort of their own home, and it's not necessarily a drawback. And for many people, it's actually a draw to that music because it's I guess you could call it more authentic, although you know
it adds a charm to it, like the lo-fi, what if needed, you know.
Exactly. And so, you know, good on you. I'd like to thank you guys for coming on the show.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Do you guys have any social media plugs? Anything? Where can people find you? Where can people listen to your music?
I mean, the normal stuff.
The normal stuff everywhere.
Facebook, Spotify.
Should anyone look out for any new releases anytime soon? Or?
Yeah, I mean, I'm wrapping stuff up, and so hopefully, can't give a date.
No.
But next year, I hope to have a lot of music coming out.
Cool,
excellent.
Yeah.
So, thank you so much for coming on the show, and thank you for watching. You can follow us on @Live Sound Group and follow these guys @The Undercover Dream Lovers. Have a nice day.